Television is such a powerful form of media that it's credited with being the reason John F. Kennedy became president. Not because of propaganda, but because it allowed Kennedy to reach millions of Americans in a way that had been impossible up to that point. When he was running against Richard Nixon in 1960, television had just become a household medium, and for the first time in history, the presidential debates were televised. Before this, they had been on the radio, but now Americans could see the debates, and that changed everything. Marking the 50th anniversary of this historic event, Time magazine said that, quote, "It's now common knowledge that without the nation's first televised debate 50 years ago Sunday, Kennedy would never have been president," end quote. Why, you wonder? Well, people who listened to the debate on the radio, which many did because not everyone had television back then, thought that Nixon won. But the people who saw the debate on TV had a completely different conclusion. The reason is this: there were a bunch of hot lights on the stage, which were needed to properly light the candidates. And because Nixon refused to put makeup on to take the shine off his face, which today everyone on TV knows is a standard practice, he looked pale, sweaty, and shiny. While Kennedy had a tan from campaigning outdoors in the days leading up to the debate and took the advice of the producers and wore makeup, so he looked to be radiating health and confidence to the viewers who were watching TV, whereas Nixon looked kind of sickly and weak. But the advent of television has transformed society in many other ways. Television news is very different from newspapers or magazines, which tend to cover stories in much greater detail and context than a 15-second soundbite and require a reader's active attention and willingness to follow a story. Television, on the other hand, is a passive medium and often relies on a quick pace, flashy graphics, and dramatic music in hopes of gaining an audience's attention and holding it long enough to make it to the commercial break so that they can get paid. TV news, if it even qualifies as news, only skims along the surface of issues, mentioning a few basic points, and is often just infotainment with no real substance. What the audience sees is a carefully crafted version of a story that the producers and the editors want people to see, while leaving out the parts that they don't want. The reason intelligent people listen to talk radio or podcast is because those formats provide long-form interviews and in-depth discussions which explore subjects in detail during a 15 or 20-minute segment and may even continue the discussion after a commercial break for even longer. In comparison, the average television news segment on a national evening news broadcast is under 2.5 minutes. For local TV news, it's just 41 seconds. Television news is the equivalent of reading the headline of a newspaper article and the first paragraph, or maybe two. Aside from the limitations of the television format, the days of Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America who anchored the CBS Evening News for 19 years, are long gone. After his era was over, we got people like Dan Rather, who used fake documents in a report about George W. Bush's service record from when he was in the National Guard, and Brian Williams, who fabricated a story about his plane being shot down in Iraq when he was covering the war. And everyone knows the clowns on cable news are even worse. Everyone knows Hollywood celebrities make millions of dollars a year, but most people don't think about how much money celebrity journalists make. They too are performance artists, not much different from a Hollywood actor reading their lines. They know when to sound somber and when to turn up the energy and display fake outrage to the audience when the teleprompter tells them. Many of them don't believe half the things that they say. They're just playing a part, and for that they get paid very well. For example, before he was fired from NBC News, anchor Brian Williams was making $10 million a year. Dan Rather was making $6 million a year at CBS. Anderson Cooper over at CNN makes $12 million a year and has a net worth of well over $100 million. Chris Cuomo was making $6 million a year at CNN. Matt Lauer was making $25 million a year before he was fired from NBC's Today Show. To put these figures in perspective, Anderson Cooper's $12 million a year divided by 52 weeks in a year is over $230,000 a week, or $46,000 per show. He makes more money in one day than many Americans make in an entire year. And for that kind of money, these television personalities will say and do almost anything. All of the big three broadcast networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS, try to separate themselves from the cable shows, but promoting the liberal agenda remains at the core of their existence. They also aren't without their major scandals that should cause viewers to question their integrity as news networks. CBS once killed a story about the tobacco industry covering up how addictive cigarettes are out of concerns that if they were sued by the tobacco tobacco companies for their report it would interfere with the pending sale of the network to Westinghouse. The incident was later made into a movie called The Insider in 1999, starring Al Pacino and Russell Crowe. You may have seen it. After burying a story about Nike using sweatshops to manufacture their clothes out of fears that they would lose the company as a sponsor for the 1998 Winter Olympics, CBS reporters wore Nike jackets during the coverage as part of the sponsorship deal in what was widely criticized as a breach of journalistic ethics. After ABC News interrupted the network's broadcast for some breaking news about the Russia investigation, Brian Ross falsely claimed that Michael Flynn had implicated Donald Trump in the conspiracy, resulting in the stock market immediately dropping 350 points out of concerns that the president was now going to be impeached or arrested. General Flynn made no such allegations, and the story was completely false, like all of the stories about the Russia witch hunt. A few years earlier, during their breaking news coverage of the shooting in an Aurora, Colorado movie theater by lunatic James Holmes, anchor George Stephanopoulos said that Brian Ross found something that might be significant. He went on to then incorrectly report that the shooter may be a member of the Tea Party because ABC found someone on Facebook who had the same name and had the Tea Party listed as one of their interests. Of course, it was the wrong James Holmes. ABC News claimed that then Attorney General Jeff Sessions delivered a speech to a hate group after meeting with the Christian nonprofit organization Alliance Defending Freedom, one of the most powerful Christian rights organizations in the country. Basically, all Christian groups are seen as hate groups to the liberal establishment, which always cites the Southern Poverty Law Center as the ultimate authority of such things because they're massive Christian phobes. As bad as the big three broadcast networks have become in recent years, though, cable news channels like CNN and MSNBC are sadly much worse. They'll talk endlessly about the same story on every show, every hour, all day, all week, all month really, to ensure maximum saturation, hoping their propaganda will reach as many viewers as possible. Since most people just tune in for an hour or two a day, they're still talking about the January 6th protest at the Capitol almost every single night on almost every single show. It's like being stuck in the movie Groundhog Day, but in hell. Normal Americans wonder how anyone could watch CNN or MSNBC ever again after the massive fraud those supposed news networks engaged in during the Trump administration by perpetuating the massive Russia hoax and countless other fake news stories. But it's easy to underestimate how many stupid people there are out there. After all, the Jerry Springer Show aired for 27 years and was able to keep audiences coming back every day to watch another group of trailer trash fight with each other about who cheated on who and who the father is of some poor child. And despite how mindless and repetitive the show was, enough people kept tuning in every day for it to stay on the air for almost 3 decades. If you like my monologues like this, then you'll really enjoy my books because that's where I cover all the things you're not allowed to say on social media. And of course, I have everything sourced and footnoted so you can verify my research. So order the Liberal Media Industrial Complex in paperback from Amazon.com or download the ebook from any of the major ebook stores. And of course, there's a link to the Amazon listing in the description below. So click it and head on over there and check it out.